My brothers and sisters, the Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
When Jesus was born into Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of King Herod, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star at its rising, and have come to do him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Assembling all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it has been written through the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, since from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and ascertained from them the time of the star's appearance. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search diligently for the child. When you have found him, bring me word, that I too may go and do him homage." After their audience with the king, they set out. And behold, the star that they had seen at its rising preceded them, until it came and stopped over the place where the child was. They were overjoyed at seeing the star, and on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. They prostrated themselves and did him homage. Then they opened their treasures and offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their country by another way. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Today, the Christian churches throughout the world celebrate the Feast of the Nativity. The word nativity is a simple Greek word meaning the dawning, the awakening, or metaphorically, the dramatic new awareness that comes to a person. The Gospel and Old Testament readings show that epiphany taking place, a dramatic change of understanding for the Magi and for the world. The first reading from Isaiah the prophet is written to the Hebrew community, which is dispersed throughout the known world and subjugated in various kingdoms. In this reading, Isaiah promises them that their position will not always be this, that the day will come when they gather together as one people, and that people will become strong, wealthy, and powerful under the direction of a good king. The responsorial psalm develops what that kingdom, that political entity, will be like, explaining that in that kingdom, the poor will be cared for, the brokenhearted consoled, and peace will reign till the moon is no more. Again, a particular concrete political kingdom with one good ruler who exercises his power justly. Now, the Magi were highly knowledgeable students of the stars and students of the literature of the times, and so they came looking for this king, looking for this child who would become this particularly powerful, wealthy, dominating person to take charge of a culture. And so they saw the star and followed it to Jerusalem, the center of the Hebrew people, and expected that Jesus would be found in the halls of power, a child of the elite. Then they spoke and listened and learned that this new ruler would be born in Bethlehem. Now, it's just a 7-mile walk from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, but it required of the Magi a total transformation of understanding of who God is and where God resides. They were expecting that the deity would be robed in worldly power, might, money. Instead, they found the deity in the child, poor, lowly, dependent, a child living on the margins of society, a child who would soon be taken by his parents as a refugee to Egypt to escape political oppression, the possibility of death. What an epiphany, what a transformation was required in their minds and hearts to accept this vision of God and the locus of God's presence. And it is this message that the bishops of the United States ask us to speak about today. For in the United States, the bishops have said, this is Migration Sunday. And those speaking at the Masses should speak about the responsibility of all Christian people to care for the stranger. For the bishops point out, of all countries here in the United States, each of us has had the biblical experience, for we or our ancestors were once strangers in this strange land, were once alien among an American people unknown to them. And they ask us then to bring to the attention of the community our responsibility to care for the stranger among us, for the alien, the outsider, the outcast. But I think if the bishops knew what was happening in the Diocese of Buffalo, they would be very proud of the way the Catholic Church is caring for the alien. Now let me give you a little story, a little background on that. The United States Catholic Charities was started in 1923, and one of its reasons for its founding was to care for immigrants. But at that time, there was no real distinction between an immigrant, a migrant, a refugee, an asylee. Those particular distinctions were made after World War II for this reason. During World War II, the United States and most of the rest of the countries of the world refused admittance to Jewish people, sending them back, even when they arrived at our shores, to be killed under the Nazi regime in the many countries the Nazis had taken over. Finding that, in the end, very repugnant and never wanting to do that again, all the countries of the Western world came together and agreed that never again would they send back to a country anyone who had a well-founded fear of persecution. And so the distinctions were made between refugees and asylees and migrants and immigrants. And Catholic Charities is involved in resettling refugees. Now, the only person that can say that a group is a refugee group is the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. And he or she, it's been a she much more often than a he in the last few decades, decides after a period of war and conflict that either all the people in a country or a subgroup in a country should be afforded this refugee status and allowed to be taken into other countries. Now, this is a lengthy and complicated process. First, the UN High Commissioner usually waits a couple years after the violence to see if it will settle down and people will be able to return to their own country. because, of course, it's better to go back to your own language and culture and people. But sometimes that's not possible. And so these people are moved into refugee camps. They're usually tents. They're usually very, very primitive, no health care, poor nutrition, a lot of violence. Many of the women who come to us have been raped in these camps. And they live there for a period of time until Homeland Security and the FBI and the INS have an opportunity to check them out, to see if there's anything in their background that would make them suspect, that we would not want them to be in our country. They also have multiple health tests so that they wouldn't be bringing some communicable disease. Then I'll tell you a little story. I'd like to tell this in a story now about one family that came to us so that you'll understand the process. So Louise and her husband, Louise was a nurse, her husband was a lawyer. They lived in Rwanda, and the genocide came almost overnight. They escaped from the country, literally climbing over dead bodies in the streets with their 3 children. They went to Congo, which is the adjacent country. They stayed there about 1.5 years until that same genocide came over the border and into Congo, and they had to flee again. This time they went to Ivory Coast, or much farther west in Africa. They lived there in a refugee camp. Again, the health conditions are very poor, and her husband died of malaria. Shortly after that, she was given notice that she and her children would be accepted into the United States. When people are accepted into, they don't choose what country they go to. Now, Louise was a nurse and well-educated and went to school in French, as most Rwandans do. So she would have been much better, but they had to go to the United States. Now, when they're accepted into the United States, there are 10 refugee resettlement organizations in the United States. 8 of them are churches. The Catholic Church is by far the largest resettler of refugees in the United States. And our diocese is one little part of that project of the United States bishops. So Louise got a notice that she was coming to Buffalo, with no idea where that was. And one winter day, as with all families, we sent 2 people to the airport to pick up Louise and the kids and to bring them to an apartment which had already been furnished, winter clothes in their approximate sizes. And we always try to have some food on the stove or in the oven so that it smells like something they're familiar with, and so that they can sit and eat together something that tastes familiar. Within 2 days, the children were registered in school, and as Louise began her English as a second language classes. This is a part of the service that you provide. The government gives a small stipend for each person, but people need so much more than just an apartment, and so you provide a great many services. We have a refugee center at Nativity Parish, used to be Nativity Parish on the west side. In the school, we have a school. We have 11 levels of English as a second language. We have citizenship classes, and we have acculturation classes. In the rectory, we have social workers, job finders, and translators. On Wednesday, we're going to open an additional service. In the church, with a grant from the Oshai Foundation, we were able to build what's called a building within a building. And in that building is going to be a clinic, a dental clinic, which is a part of the services of Baker Victory Services. They already have a clinic in Lackawanna, and then they'll open one on that site for the refugees, but also for people on the west side. And a group of doctors called Mobile Medical will also be coming to offer a primary care clinic. Now, the point of clustering these services has to do with languages. In the main, these people come, every few years, it's a whole new group of people from another country in crisis. And they come sometimes speaking languages it's very hard to find translations For example, we have a group from Burma now. Some are Chin, some are Karima, some are Karen. I bet you don't know a soul that speaks any of those languages. It's not easy to find translations. The same thing, the Africans, well-educated people often speak English or French, but others, not at all. So, we are going to be able to impact and provide greater services. This is your work. This is something that you accomplish. And because Catholic Charities is able to create a critical mass of services, then we're able to attract other people to come and join with us to contribute. For example, the business school at Canisius College has assisted some of the people in starting little stores or little enterprises where they're able to serve their own people. With Niagara University, we had noticed that many of our refugees get startup jobs in hospitality. You know, so they're cleaning buildings, they're working with baggage, or very simple kinds of things. But they kind of get stuck in those jobs. So we were able to work with Niagara University, and Niagara is putting on a little course for different of the refugees who are at a pretty good level of English, showing them what are the possibilities within the hospitality trade, where they could move themselves up and what they would have to do to begin to move that way, and to give them some instruction. So Niagara is involved. And now D'Youville College will be very involved in assisting with the health care. Their physician's assistants, nurse practitioners, and chiropractic students will be doing rotations out of the clinic. So all this is very possible because of the base that you provide. And sometimes we have simple success, but sometimes we have amazing success, like Louise and her family. Having been a nurse, Louise went to work in a nursing home, but of course, she didn't have American credentials, so she started as a nurse's aide. She attended community college to get her RN. She went on to D'Youville to get her Bachelor of Science. Her one daughter already has a master's degree, and she's working for Catholic Charities in refugee resettlement. We're very happy to have her. The son graduated from Cornell on scholarship with honors, wanted to give back, so he came and worked at Nativity Miguel, the middle school for inner city kids, the Jesuit middle school, for a couple years. He's now in his second year in medical school. Their youngest daughter is junior, I think, in high school. She tells me she wants to be a medical missionary. So for some people, we're a staircase, but for some people, like Louise's family, we're a launching pad for them to move ahead and to create a new community for themselves and a new life. So I want to thank you for that. Thank you in their name, and thank you in the name of the church, because these immigrants are creating a new face to our church. If you ever go to church at St. Martin de Porres, you will see a lot of Sudanese and South Sudanese worshiping. At Holy Cross, you'll see Congolese and Eritreans coming together. And at Our Lady of Hope, you'll see many people who are coming from Bhutan and Burma. And even with their 4 different languages, they are still coming together as a parish to worship together, to understand one another, and to build up the faith. The bishops have said we have become again an immigrant church in the United States, and this is also true of Buffalo. So we have much to thank these people for building us up, for building up our faith, for letting us see how people cling to their faith through terrible persecutions. I thank you in their name. I thank you in the name of the board and employees of Catholic Charities. We love what we do, but we could never do it without your support. I thank you in God's name, because it's God's work that we come to do. When we have our own epiphany and we see the face of Christ in every human being, especially in the lowly and the poor, the stranger and the marginalized. And I can't tell you how much we rely on the parish here. The parish of St. Gregory the Great last year gave the appeal $730,000, making it a larger gift than any of the rural counties in the diocese. We count very much on you. We thank you, and I ask God in every way to bless your continued generosity. Thank you.